It was August 20th, 1989, around 11:47 p.m. The location was Beverly Hills at 722 North Elm Drive. An emergency call came into dispatch, and on the other end was a panicked young man screaming that someone had killed his parents. Inside that multi-million-dollar mansion, Jose and Kitty Menendez had just been attacked in a brutal and targeted way. To the media rushing toward the scene, it looked like a professional mob hit. To the police, it was a total mystery. But the real truth was buried deep inside the history of the Menendez family itself. This is not just a summary of a famous trial. This is a step-by-step reconstruction of what happened inside that mansion, from the roots of a complicated family empire to the fatal events of that night. Every detail, unbiased, fact by fact. If you want detailed, unbiased investigations into some of the world's most confusing cases, hit that subscribe button and support Top Crime Cases. To understand what happened on August 20th, you first have to understand the financial and emotional structure of the Menendez household. On paper, this family looked like the perfect American dream. Jose Menendez was a Cuban immigrant who came to the United States with almost nothing. Through nonstop drive and hard work, he climbed the corporate ladder. He landed major executive roles at RCA and later became the CEO of Live Entertainment. He built a multi-million-dollar empire from the ground up. That kind of work ethic is hard not to respect. But that same intense and unforgiving energy also shaped the way he ran his home. Kitty Menendez, his wife, was a former beauty pageant queen who managed the household and the family's public image. But medical records and witness testimony presented in court by her doctors showed that she struggled for years with severe depression and dependency. It paints the picture of a woman living inside a home that looked perfect from the outside, while things inside were slowly falling apart. And honestly, you have to feel for someone trapped in that kind of silent pain while still being expected to look perfect in front of Beverly Hills society. Their two sons, Lyle, born in 1968, and Erik, born in 1970, grew up inside this tightly controlled environment. According to family friends and tennis coaches who later testified under oath, Jose placed extreme pressure on his sons. They were expected to perform at the highest level in sports and academics. The house had a strict order, and Jose's control sat at the center of it. The boys were expected to be champions. In that house, failure was not treated like an option. In the months before the crime, the family completely broke down. But what caused that breakdown depends on which side of the courtroom you listen to. To see the full picture, we have to look at both arguments. The defense painted the home as a place ruled by fear. According to the defense attorneys and Erik's emotional testimony on the stand, Erik told Lyle that he had been enduring ongoing severe physical and sexual abuse by their father. The defense argued that the brothers became consumed by fear and paranoia. They claimed the brothers truly believed their parents were going to kill them to stop a public scandal from destroying the family name and Jose's corporate reputation. But the prosecution presented a completely different reason for the tension in the home: money and rebellion. Police records showed that Lyle and Erik had committed several burglaries in the Calabasas area. This reportedly enraged Jose because it threatened the clean family image he had worked so hard to protect. According to the prosecution's timeline and witness testimony, Jose threatened to cut the brothers off and remove them from his will, meaning they could lose access to the family's multi-million-dollar inheritance. Both sides gave the jury a heavy question to deal with. Was this about fear, trauma, and survival, or was it about money, anger, and control? Whatever motive someone believes, the physical evidence leading up to that night is clear and undisputed. Days before the killings, Lyle and Erik drove to a Big Five sporting goods store in San Diego. Using a stolen ID that belonged to a friend, they bought two 12-gauge shotguns. That part is not speculation. The store receipts documented the transaction, and that purchase became the physical foundation for what happened next. Now we get to August 20th, 1989. This is the timeline, based on ballistics, crime scene analysis, and official court testimony. At around 8 p.m., Jose and Kitty returned to their Beverly Hills mansion. They had spent the day on a chartered shark fishing trip. From the outside, it sounded like a normal family weekend. By around 10 p.m., Jose and Kitty had settled into the den at the back of the house. They were eating ice cream and watching the Billionaire Boys Club on television. On the floor plan of the home, the den sat down a hallway, away from the front entrance where the brothers would later come in. At around 11:45 p.m., Lyle and Erik entered the den holding the 12-gauge shotguns. According to crime scene reconstruction experts who testified in court, the brothers opened fire almost immediately. The shooting was not a single quick moment. A total of 15 rounds were fired, and that detail matters because the shotguns they purchased could not hold that many shells at once. That means the brothers had to stop and manually reload during the attack before continuing. Jose and Kitty suffered fatal wounds and died inside the den. By around 11:50 p.m., the brothers began cleaning up. They gathered spent shotgun shells from the carpet to remove obvious evidence. Then they left the mansion, got into their car, and drove away. They later disposed of the shotguns and their blood-stained clothing in a remote area along Mulholland Drive. The weapons were never recovered by police. Later that night, the brothers returned to the house to discover the scene. Lyle called 911, making the frantic emergency call that sent law enforcement rushing to 722 North Elm Drive. When Beverly Hills police arrived, the scene was so intense that they first believed it was an organized crime hit. Because Jose had connections in the rough world of the entertainment business, detectives focused heavily on possible mob links. Believing the brothers were grieving victims of a mafia-style message, police did not test Lyle and Erik's hands for gunshot residue that night. That mistake changed the direction of the investigation. It was a basic procedure that was missed, and once that chance was gone, it could never be recovered. But the idea of a perfect crime did not last long, and it was not the forensic evidence at the scene that first exposed the cracks. It was the money. Within 6 months of their parents' deaths, Lyle and Erik spent an estimated $700,000. Financial records showed purchases of luxury cars, including a Porsche Carrera and a Jeep Wrangler. They bought expensive Rolex watches, hired full-time tennis coaches, and Lyle invested in a restaurant in Princeton, New Jersey. This became one of the biggest points of debate at trial. The prosecution argued that the spending spree proved motive to them. The brothers killed their parents for money and then started enjoying the inheritance almost immediately. The defense pushed back hard. They called a forensic psychologist who argued that the spending was a coping mechanism. According to the defense, the brothers were not celebrating. They were spiraling. The money was being used to fill an emotional emptiness caused by trauma and mental distress. In the end, it was not the police who cracked the case. It was Erik's own conscience. Overwhelmed by guilt, fear, and psychological pressure, Erik confessed what had happened to his therapist, Dr. L. Jerome Oziel. Later, Lyle also attended therapy sessions, and the brothers' statements were secretly recorded on audio cassette tapes. Dr. Oziel's mistress, Judalon Smith, knew about those tapes. After her relationship with Oziel fell apart, she went to the police and told them what she had heard. That twist sounds like something from a movie, but it happened in real life. That evidence changed everything. On March 8, 1990, police surrounded Lyle Menendez and arrested him. A few days later, Erik surrendered after flying back to Los Angeles from a tennis tournament in Israel. The evidence brought them into custody, but the trials that followed divided the country. The first trial ended with 2 deadlocked juries. They could not agree on a verdict. That led to a second trial. And instead of choosing a side emotionally, we have to look at the legal arguments that shaped the case and led to the final convictions. The first major debate was about the abuse evidence in the second trial. The question was simple but powerful. Why did Judge Stanley Weisberg heavily limit testimony about sexual abuse in the 1995 retrial compared to the first trial? Was that legally fair? From the judge and prosecution's view, the brothers were adults at the time of the killings. They were not in immediate physical danger on the night of August 20th. Their parents were sitting in the den watching television. Because of that, the judge ruled that past abuse was not as relevant to a legal claim of self-defense. The prosecution argued that the defense was trying to use the abuse claims to gain sympathy from the jury and distract from the facts of the ambush. But the defense and many legal critics strongly disagreed. They argued that limiting the abuse evidence stripped the jury of the full context needed to understand the brothers' state of mind. They said long-term trauma can change how a person sees danger. From their perspective, if the jury could not fully hear about the alleged abuse, they could not fully understand why the brothers claimed they felt they had to act. The second major debate was the imperfect self-defense argument. The question was this: can a planned attack with shotguns legally qualify as self-defense? The prosecution's answer was no. Their argument was direct. First-degree murder requires premeditation. The state pointed to the timeline. The brothers bought guns days earlier using fake ID, waited until their parents were unarmed and vulnerable, reloaded during the shooting, and cleaned up the shells afterward. To the state, all of that showed a cold and calculated plan driven by money. The defense relied on imperfect self-defense. That argument applies when someone honestly believes they are in immediate danger, even if that belief is unreasonable. The defense argued that Lyle and Erik truly believed their father was going to kill them that weekend to keep them quiet. They claimed that fear caused a psychological break, and the brothers felt they had to act first in order to survive. The third major debate involved Dr. Oziel's audio tapes. Did using the therapist's recordings violate doctor-patient confidentiality? Under California law, doctor-patient privilege can be waived if a patient threatens harm or death to the therapist or to others. Because Lyle allegedly threatened Dr. Oziel during the sessions to keep the secret safe, the court ruled that the tapes could be used as evidence. Even today, that ruling remains controversial. Legal experts and medical ethics professionals still debate where the line should be drawn between privacy, safety, and criminal evidence. That is what makes this case so complicated. The physical evidence is undeniable. The timeline is documented. The confessions, financial records, gun purchase, and crime scene details all exist in the court record. But the meaning behind those facts is what people still argue about. Was it a calculated killing for money? Was it an act driven by years of fear and trauma? Or was it something legally and emotionally more complicated than either side could fully explain? Now I want to turn it over to you. Based only on the legal definitions we just walked through, do you believe Judge Weisberg was right to limit the abuse testimony in the second trial? Or do you believe that decision kept the jury from seeing the whole truth? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, because I really want to know how you see this one.